Look, you wouldn't wait if you were me, would you? Hey, it's Romania Black. And yeah, I'm just, it's a two-parter. And I watched episode 6 yesterday, and I had the day off for a holiday today from work. And I was like, I was sitting there fidgeting. I was like, no, I'll wait to watch episode 7. And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, I'm not going to wait. So hopefully my dogs will be very congenial right now, but it's Romania Black, and we are on episode 7 of DanDaDan. And episode 6 was fantastic. I really loved episode 6. I loved everything about it. I loved Ira and her character's introduction and expansion. I liked this creepy Puella Magi Madoka-esque ghost that has appeared. I love Momo and Ken working together, but Ken's also very shy around Momo because he's recognized she's cute. I loved everything. And then Turbo Granny's involved. I just loved everything that was happening last week. It was so good. And I was like, I cannot wait. I've got to see this episode. So don't worry. After this episode, we'll be dealing with the rule of 8, which is a thing. And I'll explain that next week. And I'll wait until I can read the comments to go any further. I think the comments that I'll be reading are for episodes 4 and 5. So next week we'll get back on the train with those. But I just had to watch this episode, so I'm sorry for going ahead, but I was so excited. I was like, I really just need to go ahead and watch it, so I hope that's okay. But with that being said, I do want to give a shout out over to our philanthropy tier over on Patreon to thank them so much for their support, because I give them a shout out each week. Sometimes it's in this video, sometimes it's in other videos, sometimes it's in multiple videos a week, but I want to support them. And usually anytime I don't have a lot of comments to go through in the intro, it seems like an appropriate time to do that. So with that being said, I want to give a shout out to Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Be Happy, to Bryant Reed, to Damage3245, to Danger Zone, as well as to Dana, to Devorin, to Destiny Marie, as well as to Eric, Ichu, Fisho, Ghostly Turnip, El Freya, Liam Polzel, as well as Lyndon, Matthew Palfinier, Murphy, Nago, Nicholas, Sunspots, Shimoyama, Starman AA, Translucent Men, and Trails. Thank you all so much for your support. I greatly appreciate it. All of my love. And of course, those of you on YouTube watching, if you want to go ahead and see next week's episode, you can join for the measly price a month of $5, not per video, a month of $5. And you can see all of my stuff a week early than everybody else on YouTube and get access to the polls. If you just want access to the polls, it's just $1. It's a very cheap, way to go if you want to see stuff early, but I appreciate all of your support. So thank you. But yeah, y'all, I'm so excited for this episode. I want to see the resolution because we have Ira has been spat out along with Ken and Momo. The ghost is still at large. Granny has allowed them to light it on fire. So I want to know what the conclusion is going to be. If they're going to get Ken's ball, that was one of the main reasons I wanted to go ahead and watch. I'm like, Ira had one of Ken's balls. So is that going to get back in their possession after this episode or not? 'Tis the question. So we're not going to waste any more time. We are going to dive into episode 7 of DanDaDan, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and I'll see you all on the other side. Welp. I didn't sit down to watch DanDaDan today to cry my eyes out, but here we are. I flawless, perfect. That is one of the most powerful flashbacks I have watched in anime in recent memory, and it was for a one-off ghost that was a character for an episode. Well, we say a character for an episode. Let's be clear about that. We say a character for an episode. Acrobatic Silky is our ghost, but they were introduced for an episode and a half, and now they're gone. And just the impact they had, that flashback was like the beginning of Up. That flashback it could have been a cinematic movie all in itself. That was incredible. And I'm like, I didn't expect Ira to die either. I mean, I guess her friends are fine. I guess they're over there. They're fine. They're just passed out. They got through into a building, but they're okay. But they did establish that Ira getting swallowed by the yokai means that they were going to die, that it was going to stop their heart to get eaten by yokai. Good to know. Good to know that that's what happens, and that's unless you have supernatural powers, you're pretty much doomed to have that happen. The way that this episode connected from the very beginning with the black and white, the jumbled, like her scrambling around the darkness and it being all in black and white to it being in color later. Show. This was masterful. Things deserve praise when they deserve praise, and this was incredible. Now, I kept waiting for like all the eventual moments for Ira to wake up and have a crush on Okarun, because I think that they're setting up to have like some stupid love triangle. I still think they're setting up to have a stupid love triangle. And I hate love triangles unless they're mutual. If it's a mutual love triangle, like there are some of those, right? There are some good mutual love triangles. In Trigun, there's one, well, it's like a love square, but there's a love triangle in Trigun that's really good. For some parts of Berserk, up to a point. At some point, and there are others. I'm all for a love triangle if the triangle has sides that are mutually attracted to each other and they're honest about that. Then I'm like, okay, you can make that work really fun. But I don't think Okarun really likes Ira. I think she would try to seduce him, and Okarun's still developing his feelings. But in the long run, it's like whenever there is an OTP established and you know it's going to be end game, then love triangles get annoying because you're like, Momo and Ken are end game. They are. So I feel like all of the stuff with Ira is a waste of our time if it's a love triangle. Now, unless that stuff with the love triangle ends up giving us more development with Ira and her character, then I'm like, okay, I see the point of it. But I'm like, don't waste my time with a love triangle that is not, unless it's to get the bonds between Momo and Ken stronger. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But the whole time, I kept being like, is she going to wake up in Ken's arms and be like, oh, is she going to like wake up during the CPR and be like, oh, like I kept waiting for that moment to happen. And luckily it didn't, but I still think now that she has ghost power, and I think she has ghost powers, I think she's going to have them because unless she's just, you could go a number of ways with this. They have the ball back, by the way. They have the golden ball and they're going to keep it, I'm sure. Which is good. I'm glad they got the golden ball yet. That was my big question this episode was, are they going to get it back? Yeah, they got that back relatively easy, which was great. I think a couple of things could happen. One, Ira now has powers of the supernatural because she has a ghost aura in her. She has the lingering effects of acrobatic Silky. Will that let her like make her hair grow long and use it to like whip around like an acrobat? I don't know. We don't know if she has dance skills or not. There's that. There is also the option that she doesn't have ghost powers, but she like is going to continue her quest to try to exorcise the demons in them, which would be funny. It'd be funny if she was like a slightly antagonistic character. But I feel like maybe she's going to try to like say, well, I've got ghost powers just like you, Okarun. I just, the makings of the love triangle are there. I've seen it so many times and I'm like, get out. Let Momo and Ken be a thing. But whatever. I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens with Ira's character. I'm super excited and curious what will happen with Ira's character because she's kind of this, now that she's been influenced by this ghost aura, is that going to help her develop and change? Is she going to be the same? Will she hang out with Momo and Ken? I'm sure Momo doesn't want that, but, sometimes the more the merrier if you got a squad. What is that going to look like? Maybe she can help them find the other ball. Who knows? Who knows? So I just don't know. We'll see where that goes. But the action in this opening sequence was so damn good. Like this series has a way of doing like a color palette where once it decides on a color scheme, it sticks to it but then it's really effective. Like in episode 4 where everything was just red all the time. It was just red. And then the moment that Turbo Granny dissipated, it turned to these like teals and aquamarines and blues, and it went from like really hot colors to cold instantly, and it was so effective. And here there's all the pinks, which are like not only Ira but acrobatic Silky as well, and then they dissipated to get to like the cool tones of the flashback, which was really, really effective. Now look, when Ken says Ira-chan's getting in our way, what a downer. To me, that's like his inner body being like, we don't need Ira-chan in this love triangle. No, thank you. I felt for the restrictions that Momo had throughout this episode with her hands tied. Her hands were literally tied, figuratively and literally, behind her back the entire time. I loved using the warehouse as a set piece, them doing the battle around it. I loved the way this show set up the battle, where not only could Okaru not run fast because of the way the warehouse was designed and laid out, but it also allowed Acrobatic Silky's hair to get tangled up in all of the different, structures. It just, all the little elements of the set piece for the battle interacted with one another, and it was very smart and it was very well detailed. Because sometimes when there's a battle in shonen, the location doesn't matter. Sometimes the location is not utilized in a shonen battle, and here what I appreciated is that it really was utilized. It was utilized very well, and I thought that was really cool. I liked that a lot. I thought that was pretty relevant. But yeah, and then when the ghost's like, I'm going to devour you so I can be with you forever. I'm like, at that point, she was already dead. But I loved the callbacks, every part of Acrobatic Silky's movements, all of the acrobatics, all of the ballerina dances, all of the moments from last episode and this episode were all tied to her previous life, which is crazy. Now, Turbo Granny does not know the backstory of Acrobatic Silky. I'd argue Momo and maybe Ira, if Ira was in on the flashback, are the only ones that know. So for Turbo Granny to be as ruthless as she was, I feel like Turbo Granny was being ruthless kind of in the same way that the grandmother was being ruthless back in episode 3, where they're both, it's kind of like this tough love, like, oh, just let her go, just let her fade into nothingness, whatever. But there's a hint of it beneath the surface of, or you could save them. I feel like Turbo Granny doesn't want to lose face by being sympathetic towards Acrobatic Silky. But in the same vein, I'm like, if Turbo Granny had seen what Momo had saw, she probably would have found a connection to the ghost similar to her own circumstance where she was, basically murdered. Right. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was good. I liked the idea that regardless of what happened, also I want to make a quick shout out of Momo giving a shout out to Ken. Momo being like, good job, Okaroon. Like, I like Momo and Ken supporting each other and her being like, good job, of him running. And then when she stands in front of the body, she's like, go full throttle. You can attack this ghost. And Ken's like, actually, I've done lots of things out of desperation, so I don't really know how to use this attack. It's such a great shonen moment of Ken being like, oh, that ultimate attack. Okay, so actually I've been acting out of instinct and I've not really known how to trigger it or what it does. So, That part was so good. I loved it. And then Momo's like, what? Why don't you know? But again, that's how they're very different. And so I kind of love this idea that she's like, just kick him. And he's like soccer. And she's like, but then when everything starts to go haywire and Silky looks like she's going to, bring the whole place down, Momo's like, just go, take Ira and run. I'll handle it, like she could. And that's when I love when she kicks the beam towards Momo. And that's when, I love that shot where Ken like transforms right before. Yeah. Now there's a question of, did she put herself in danger knowing it would trigger with Ken? I could have been part of it. In any case, I love the moment that Silky gets thrown outside. That's when like the regular color comes back to the world. Like, as long as you're in the ghost's domain, essentially, to reference Jujutsu Kaisen, as long as you're in the domain, it's all the bright colors and oversaturation. And then once you're out of that, it goes back to the normal color palette. But yeah, so their faces when they're like, oh yeah, Ira's dead. It's like, oh my God. So they're like, what do we do? One thing I really love about this episode is it speaks a lot for Momo's character that regardless of how horrible Ira has been, regardless of how selfish and vain Ira was and what she did to Momo and trying to exorcise her, regardless of all that, Momo was desperate to revive her. Momo was like, okay, Ken, you do CPR. I'm going to massage the heart. I can't get, my hands are tied behind my back, so I'm going to use my telekinesis powers and do that. And I think that speaks so much for Momo's character, because at no point during this was she being like, oh, I don't want Ken to put his lips on Ira's because, then, what does that say? Like, he's never kissed me before. Well, even though he has. She wasn't like that. She wasn't like that of being like, oh, I don't want Ken to like have his lips on Ira's. She didn't care. At that point, she was just trying to bring Ira back. And that speaks so much for Momo's character. I loved that. And I really didn't know if it would work or not. And then that's when the ghost brings up, if you let me give her your, aura, it could save her. And I like that Ken's going to battle. And she's like, aura's like a battery, so I'll recharge her battery and augment it with my own. Now, her augmenting, it seems like Ira's, aura gets replenished with the help of acrobatic Silkies. What the effect of that augmentation will do to Ira's body and if it will give her superpowers like Ken, we don't know. We don't know what that result's going to be. We're not going to know till next week. But damn, the fact when she like snaps her jaw saying she can't eat people anymore doing it and like just tears it open. And then you think of what she did while she was alive when her daughter was taken. Oh my God. Like that part there, I was like, oh shit, she's really serious about all this. It was such a moment of her just being willing to do anything. And she's like, I love that Momo and Ken are both like, this ghost is serious. And I like that Turbo Granny's over there like calling in a pizza, being like, yeah, that's how it would work out. And she's like, okay, I'm going to be the conduit to connect them together and we'll just do it this way. And then we start the flashback. And from 10 minutes for the next 10 minutes of this episode, it is perfect. Everything about this is perfect. And it all ties in. The fact that the color we get in the hotel room is the same color that is associated with Silky and when she's a ghost. There, we're in the hotel room. We see the timer. We see her bra off. We see the stuff on the bed. The guy's taking a shower. Like it's clear that what they've done and he's paid her. Then the traffic lights that are green and red. She sees the dress that she's going to get for her daughter. That's the dress she wears as Silky. And then she goes back like a latchkey parent. It's just her and her daughter. And she's a single mom. Like she's working as a janitor. She's working in a convenience store. She's prostituting herself. She's doing all these things to make her life work for her daughter. And then it shows her in the convenience store at night. Like she works janitor by day at this mall. Then she's at a convenience store. Then she's prostituting herself out to get her daughter like the ballet shoes and to be able to like, and it seems like she was a ballerina or a dancer herself. And we don't know the extent of what went wrong or what led her to have her daughter and be by herself. We don't know that. But that's not important. That's not relevant. What's relevant is that she had a daughter and she was devoting everything to taking care of her while they're by herself. Now there's photos like that are by the bed. There's like photos of someone. And so I don't know if like she had a husband and he died young. And so they're just, living on their own and doing that or whatever. We don't exactly know. But it's clear like what she keeps on doing day after day. And then her daughter keeps trying to like help her to keep being the mom. And then just everything about this of her and her daughter is so emotional. And the soundtrack, it was beautiful, gorgeous throughout this entirety. But she gets her daughter the dress. Everything's fine. She has her birthday. They're all sleeping there, the color palette. And then we see that something went wrong. Either she didn't do what she was supposed to do for these men, or they came to get her money back from her and take advantage of her. But the glass cutting into her, nope. And then the daughter gets taken away and we don't know what happens to the daughter. It's not, considering we don't know how much time passed between the daughter getting taken and her dying and starting to become the ghost. And then Ira seeing her as a kid, which was probably like 10 years ago at least. There's no telling what happened to the daughter. There's no telling. And I don't think that what happened to the daughter is important because probably the worst case scenario happened and the show doesn't want us to think about that. But her like taking off, getting her eye slashed, her arm slashed, everything. Her legs were fine, which was for dancing. But the whole house was ransacked and just seeing the same thing we saw at the beginning of the episode. And then they drive off and then she dies in the puddle and we see her become the ghost. It's interesting in the world building that they start out kind of as this specter trapped in this world, unable to move on. And then that gets corrupted and tainted and they become a supernatural, a ghost, a ghoul. They become that over the course of time. And I wonder if Ira losing her mom during that time frame made her more spiritually aware, because I feel like she was clearly a ghost. The dad didn't know what Ira was doing. And so I feel like the dad would freak out a little bit more if he saw his daughter grab a woman who was just in bloody robes, but she was a ghost at that point. So Ira grabbing onto her, the dad was like, "What are you doing? Like, come back over here." But her dancing like across the water, like as if she was dying and dancing across the water to become this ghost. Oh my God, insane. And then she's walking around and she can't remember what she lost. And that's the thing too, like when she became a ghost, she forgot why she was there and what was going on. Like she forgot everything. And then seeing Ira reminded her that she had a daughter, but she thought that Ira was the daughter, and that fueled her becoming the ghost. Insane. Yep. Now, the thing about it too is that when she's like walking away, he grabs her, and then we see Ira's mom, who has the same hair color as her, and she's passed, and the dad's like, we're not going to see her for a while. You have to be strong, so that when mom comes back, she can be proud of what you did. And so then we see like her reaching out for the mom. Now, the dad looks a little bit like Okaroon, a little bit in the flashback with the hair. He looks a little bit like her. He has the glasses, looks a little bit like him. And then when we see her getting taken away at the very end by the man, he looks a little bit he looks like Okaroon from the back as well. So do I think that Ira might, latch on to Ken because he reminds her of her dad? Maybe. Maybe. We'll see where that goes. If you tell me Ira has dad issues, I won't be surprised. I don't know. I just get that vibe. I've watched enough. I've read enough BL. I've watched enough romance and series that I'm like, maybe. We'll see where that goes. I may be counting my chickens before they hatch. It may be something totally separate. But the blood splatter over the daughter's face, showing Silky, she doesn't quite remember what her daughter looked like. And then her hair growing out and her slowly becoming the ghost. Yep. And then Ira, gets back to life. I like that Ken is concerned with what happened to, I like that Ken is concerned in that moment with what happened to Momo, because she's crying and he's like, "Oh, what'd she do to you?" And she's like, "Well, she showed me this really perfect, horrible flashback that's super sad." And then she's like, "All I did was hurt you." And the ghost's starting to crumble, and she's like, "I can't even control my own emotions, and I turned into a monster. So I'll just end it all now." Which is so wild. And then Turbo Granny's like, "Well, if she leaves behind regrets, she won't be able to rest in peace." That's the thing. If they leave behind regrets, they can't rest in peace. So she's like, you need to solve that, or she'll just go into an endless void, which is terrifying. Give me lots of Death Parade flashbacks. Honestly, in that moment. But what is so brilliant about this is that the show took into consideration what Ira's character has been like so far, which Ira, from the start of last episode, she was like, "You people can't exist without me, and you need me to be able to live fulfilling lives." Like, she's been an actress in that regard. So it was perfect in this moment for Ira to use her skills as this actress to convince the acrobatic Silky ghost, like, "Yeah, I'm your daughter. Now you can move on in peace and you won't be, it'll be fine." And I thought it was so fitting because, acrobatic Silky gave her aura to help Ira live again. And it's Ira's way of paying her back, being like, "I'm going to deceive you and make you think I'm your daughter so you can move on and go to a kinder world." Which, anytime there are flashbacks where people have lived horrible, miserable lives and they've been put through the worst circumstances, and then they get to move on to an afterlife where they're not in pain anymore, that tears me up. That guts me. That cuts to the core. Like, that makes me emotional, because it's like people suffering and then they get to like end that suffering. Like, that just here's my heart. Like, just, ugh. And the fact that Ira helped her do it, which also makes sense for Ira's character, because even at her core, Ira is a character that wants to do good. She wants to help people. Even if before it was in a very vain and self-centered and conceited way, here it's actually good. She actually is doing something genuinely compassionate for someone and letting the white lie help her to move on without regrets and rest in peace. It's perfectly tied to her character. It makes sense. It just fits so well. It fits so well, and I'm absolutely in love with it. Mm-hmm. And so Turbo Granny's like, well, there'll be nothing left of her, and it'll be like she didn't exist in this world. The living and the dead will forget about her. Which is interesting because I assume we don't know if the daughter is still alive, if she would forget about her, or if that's just the idea that people will forget the ghost exists. Like, for Turbo Granny wants her power back so that she can still exist in the world. So I'm sure that in the back of Turbo Granny's mind, there's the concept that she could cease to exist. So I feel like Turbo Granny puts up a big front, but she's kind of like the grandmother, like Momo's grandma, where I feel like there's more to her than that. And like she says, oh, I'm sure her life was worthless anyway, which is such an interesting thing because the way that Turbo Granny acts in that moment is kind of mimicking the way that Ira had acted last episode, where she's like, oh, well, their lives are worthless. Mine is worth so much. And here we kind of see a mimicking of that. And I like that she is like, losing the existence of someone like her isn't much. And Momo's like, it shouldn't be like that. It's too cruel. And that's when Ira makes the decision to get up and help her and give her in that moment. And then we see the dance, the dress, and whenever it went back to the flashback, and she's like, I wish I could have played with you more. I was like, this damn flashback is here to just tear our hearts out. It's here to just rip out our souls. I was doing good. I was keeping it in. I was like, I'll keep in these tears. DanDaDan. I'm not going to cry because of DanDaDan. And then we went back to that flashback the last time. Emotional wreckage. And she's like, I should have been if you weren't born as my child. And she's starting to have those regrets. Like, I wish, you hadn't been my kid and it wouldn't have had to happen. And then we see you would have been so much happier if you weren't my kid. And we go back to the place where everything was wrecked and her daughter was taken from her and just all those regrets. And that's when Ira stands up and she's like, I made you so unfortunate. And we don't even know what happened to the girl. I mean, we can presume lots of bad things happened, but we don't know. And that's when Ira steps forward and runs to her like the daughter did. Mm-hmm. And then is able to hug her in that moment. Oh, I feel like there's also something there too, where there's maybe unfinished business with Ira that we don't know about. Like, Ira was a little kid, but like her mom died really young. And I don't know if it was like a terminal illness or if her mom was involved in an accident or what happened. We don't know as the audience. We only saw her face, so we don't know for sure. But there could be unfinished business with Ira and her mom, and where she's like, I didn't get to hug my mom before she died. So this is like Ira's chance to kind of redo that moment and get back and say, no, I'm going to be doing to you and doing for you what I also wanted for myself after my own mom died. Oh, it's so good. And then like the tears where she's crying there and holding her. Oh, that's gorgeous. And then the tears coming from Acrobatic Silky are real too. They're not like the globules that they were before. And then she's like, I loved you. I was the happiest person in the universe. Oh, that just tore me up. So that nobody ever hurts them. Let them take them to a more fortunate, kinder world. Oh, gutted. It was so perfect. And she's like, I won't forget, I swear. And like, I love that her hair isn't perfect anymore. It's like all mussed and messed up. Like just, everything about it is so good. Oh, it's so good. I love it so much. But yeah, so anyway, this was such a perfect episode. It was such a perfect episode and I loved it so much. Oh my God, y'all. Y'all, I mean, as far as discussion goes, I feel like this is one of the shorter discussions, but what else can we say? What can we say? Everything about the mom, everything about Acrobatic Silky's backstory I do like that it is a kind of a different vibe than Turbo Granny. Turbo Granny's was the combined trauma of all of these women in this cave that was all collectively gathered there, and it like kind of congealed into Turbo Granny, right? And there's the theme of being able to run fast. These women couldn't run from their assailants. That's why Turbo Granny can run so fast, because it's compensating for what the women that were murdered could not do. And then you have the opposite, where with Acrobatic Silky, her dancing is free and fluid and she's out in the open, because that's what she wasn't allowed to have. She couldn't be free in life. So as a ghost, she's like dancing all over the place out in the open and is able to do so without being stopped by the restrictions of society and everyday life. So it just, it's so good. It's so good. It's so good. My biggest question is, they have the ball back. We don't know where the other one is. So it's out there somewhere. The biggest question I have going into episode 8, which the rule of 8 is next week. So excited. The rule of 8, if you don't know, anytime there is a season or series that is 11 to 13 episodes, the 8th episode is always really good. I can't believe we're already on the 8th episode. I can't believe that. I can't believe we're in, because usually the 8th episode transitions you into the third act of an arc, right? And I feel like we've met our characters, except for the one guy, but we might meet him by the end, the last 4 episodes. We've met our characters. We have our conflict set up with the ghost, and we got our conflict. We got to find Ken's ball. It's out there somewhere. His remaining family jewel. But now usually episode 8 transitions us into the last act of the season. So I can't believe we're already here. This series has flown by, and it's been so good. But my questions are, what is Ira's role going to be? Is she just going to be a designated love triangle member? Is she going to have a purpose is she going to have powers and have a purpose helping them find the golden ball? Is she there to help Momo realize her feelings for Ken? What is her purpose? What is Ira there to do? And I know you all can't tell me that, so we'll wait and see. But anyway, I'm glad Ira's alive. I'm curious to see what her character is going to do now. This episode was incredible, and I loved it so, so much. So I am really excited to see what you all have to say about it down below. So anyway, I can't wait to hear your thoughts about this episode. Please no spoilers for the future, but I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with Rule of 8, episode 8 of DanDaDan. And I'll see you then.